Waterview Apartments Phase 3, located at the northwest corner of Willow Point Way and Mount Canal Drive. Applicant Legacy Development Company Incorporated is requesting sketch plan review associated with the proposed construction of two 3-story, 45-unit apartment buildings on a 13.52-acre parcel located in a medium-high residential district under Section 350.14 of the Code of the Town of Webster.
Good evening. Thank you very much for your time in hearing this. My name is Chris Nadler, the General Counsel for Mark IV Enterprises. I'm here tonight with Chris DeMarza, the President and owner of Mark IV, and David Cox from Passero, our design engineer. As many of you may remember, this project was approved in the 1980s for an 8-story, 150-unit mid-rise apartment building. We've come back multiple times since then, most recently in 2017 for a scaled-down 5-story apartment building. At that time, we submitted a traffic study that showed that the proposed development would not have a noticeable impact at McEwen and Bay and would not have a noticeable impact at Willow Point and Bay. We submitted a line of site study in 2017 showing that no views would be impacted with a 5-story building, as well as many other environmental reports. I'm sure the town has those on files and will be updating as needed. We've met with the town supervisor and the town planner and are here today to present a much significantly reduced project, 2 3-story buildings with 90 apartment units. We're proposing to create a 13-acre parcel on which the 2 45-unit buildings would be located. That's 6.8 units per acre, which is allowed by the MHR zoning code. The primary access will be onto McEwen Drive. David Cox from Passero is here to present the technical details, and then we can both answer any questions and get the board's feedback and any suggestions.
Thank you. Good evening, board members. I'm David Cox with Passero Associates. Just to provide a little bit more information. So as Chris mentioned, that original plan was for a bunch of townhouses in the front of the property, and then that large, 8-story building or 7-story building in the back here. So that was always part of the overall plan development for this project. So it was to be broken up in phases. This last piece in the back was phase 4. That was the last phase, and that's what we're here for, is to complete that last phase. So from the beginning, it was always contemplated to have a larger building back here. This plan actually spelled out 158 units in this big building in the back here. And then as you can, on the aerial photo, you can see all the townhouses have already been developed, and that last piece is what is still being, is still vacant, and that's where we've, instead of having one large building, 158 units, now it's just 2 buildings with 45 units each, for a total of 90 units, so a definite decrease, and also just 3 stories, so bringing it down from 7 or 8 stories down to 3 stories, and 158 units down to 90 units, so quite a drastic change there. And then also some other projects in Webster that I personally have designed over my years. I just wanted to take a look at those and see, and they're actually somewhat similar. So this is Picture Parkway. This is off of Hard Road here, where there's a bunch of 4plexes surrounded by a large building. This building is 72 units, so very similar project is one we have, where you have smaller buildings in a larger building out front. We have Winding Creek Woods, where we have very similar. We have a bunch of townhomes down here, and then we have a grouping of a more larger buildings. So these are 5 buildings, and there's 130 units in this area, in a pretty dense area, pretty small area. We got 130 units grouped there, so similar. And then Webster Green or behind Brewster's. Once again, we have townhomes and then 2 larger buildings in the back here. Each of these were approved for 60 units each, so 120 units right here in this tight little area. And this actually got approved at 12 units per acre. So that's almost double what we have at 6.8 units per acre. So just on these projects, I personally have designed a very similar style of some smaller townhomes or buildings like that, in 1 or 2 or 5 larger, more dense units. So a little blow-up area here. We have McEwen Drive to the north here. So there's already an existing access point off of McEwen, which we will be utilizing for our access. Comes into the property. And we have Maritime Drive is the one that ties into McEwen, so we're going to tie into that for the first building. We have parking on 2 sides. These buildings do have garages. They have 10 garages, so they have 5 on each side. So there is some garage space for these units, which is a very nice amenity. These are higher end market rate apartments. And then the other building, the lower building, will come off of Willow Point Way, have an access there, providing parking on 2 sides again. Same thing with those garages. So, yeah, and we're at about 1.6 parking spaces per unit. I will point out that the original design up here had planned for 1.5 spaces per unit. So that's very much in keeping what we have proposed here. And then as far as just kind of an elevation view, here's a rendering of what the conceptually what the buildings will look like. So a nice modern style looking building. We do have a flat roof. So that'll actually be a very similar height to a 2-story single-family house with a pitched roof, or a 2-story townhome with a pitched roof. So really similar height in keeping with surrounding buildings in the neighborhood, as well as fits in with code. So code is a max of 3 stories, so we are within code for that. There's no issues there. And really tonight we are at the conceptual sketch plan. So we really wanted to get feedback from the town. That's why we're here, to see if we need to make any modifications, changes, and really are looking for the board's input on this. But this is a great project. There's definitely a need for a diversity of housing stock. I know Webster's a growing area, a great place to live. I moved here in 2015 because it's where life is worth living. It's really a great town. A lot of trees and the bay, the lake. There's just Webster has a lot to offer, and I think a lot of people know that and would like to move here. So yeah, and with that, we can take any questions you might have.
Okay, thanks, David. Anybody, any questions?
How many bedrooms are these units gonna have?
How many variances?
Bedrooms.
Bedrooms.
It'll be a mix of 1, 2, and possibly a few 3-bedroom units.
Because with 1 point whatever car spaces per unit there, if you have a 3-bedroom one, and you have a couple living in there with 2 of their kids, they'd be 4 cars, or they'd be possibly 4 cars.
That is possible. We actually regulate that through the terms of our lease. We're not going to allow a couple to let their adult children with vehicles live there without, they would have to get a separate unit. Then we regulate that through our lease. Interestingly, we did a parking analysis of our properties. There's 2,000 units throughout the county, and what we need for our tenants and their guests and their service providers is about 1.2 unit spaces per unit. And in this project, we're supplying 1.5. 1.6.
So it's a high ratio of 1-bedroom apartment.
The color sketch of the apartments that you're planning, those are the colors you're going to use? The black and the orange, or excuse me, orange? I'm referring to this.
Yeah, I think those are, some of that is wood feature, not orange.
I think by the time this project gets there, it's going to look a little bit different than this.
Yeah.
I think that's a good bet.
So let's leave it with that. To me, the biggest issue with this is going to be the variances. We're going to need some variances on this. That one part, right, what is that, about 8 foot or something, 16 foot from the property line? That's going to be an issue. That's going to be an issue. You know, we met last week, we discussed it a little bit, controversy going on about the number of units per acre, and you're combining the two parcels of land. And I know I wasn't positive of how that worked in a situation like this. We do a little research on it, and actually you're correct. They're saying that, because looking up, the town engineer in the past has looked at sites like this, similar situations, and has agreed that you use the entire parcel, even though it's not usable, it's wetlands, EPOD, this, that, and the other, you're still considered.
Is there a written policy regarding that?
Is there, I don't know if there's a policy, but that's what the town accepted on other projects.
I realize that's what they've accepted in the
I was built, and the town board never changed it.
Yeah, but I know the actual wording literally says maximum of 5 units per acre. It doesn't say average, it says maximum.
Per acre. So there's 16, how many acres is this?
So they're saying that they have acres per acre, so that's greater than 5.
There's 13, we have 13 and a half acres?
We have 13.1 acres.
But the code specifically says maximum of 5 units per acre,
It's 8 units per acre.
which is what you have, which is greater than 5. The code says 8, which says 5 units.
No, it says 8. Either way, one of the nice things about this is that the development is focused up at the top of the hill, completely away from the environmentally sensitive areas.
So that's different than what's on
This is, I printed this from home.
If that's how it is now, when I looked at it earlier, the version I saw, literally said 5. I don't know why, because we don't have a print book anymore. We don't have what's called.
Okay. All right, thank you.
But if you're specifically at 8, that exact number.
We're well below, we're at 6.8, we're allowed 8.
Right. But what you're doing is you're averaging it over the entire parcel. And so my question is, so this thing says 8 per acre. The way I read that when it says 8 per acre, that's it. And you said you had
13.1 acres.
6.8.
right, but you're doing an average of 13 acres.
Yeah, and that's,
You have a parcel, but it says maximum per acre, 8 per acre.
okay, so there's
You
a
can't-
total of 13,
So if you got, yeah, but it's not 13 acres. You can't, you're looking at that, the way it's written, it says 8 per acre. It's not an average of 8 per acre. It says a maximum of 8 per acre. What you're doing is an average of 8 per acre. You're taking the entire 13 acres and you're saying, you're making 4 acres, 90, whatever units that you put in and more equipment. That's actually an average of the entire acreage of the company.
So,
The code is written, it says 8. So what I'm asking is, even though the town has done this before, has there been any kind of written policy that says that we have administratively determined that when it says maximum, do we actually mean average? And I haven't seen anything that supports that.
I will tell you that there's New York State case law that defines it per parcel. Essentially, I guess what you're defining it as an average. But I'm sure that Mr. Taylor and Mr. Jesse and I can work that out.
Yeah, we would need to see something that supports that. But, I mean, I understand that it has been allowed in the past and it had higher densities in other areas, but with the way the wording actually is, it says a specific number per acre. What you're giving us is an average for this entire development. And then the other question I have in relation to that is that the back portion of this parcel, this original development district, and by the way, I've never seen any previous approval drawings, even though I've requested them. I've never seen any of the previous approval drawings by phase for this project. Okay. This project is from 1988. Things have changed significantly environmentally. You have environmental protection overlay districts that cover the ponderance of this entire parcel. You have a forested protection area that's also covering most of this parcel. There are also still you are in now the waterfront, the LWRP, which is also new. So you have a whole new set of environmental regulations that have to be complied with. So the other discussion is that all this area in the back that they're claiming is, you can do an average of development on, it's really not developable. So does that really count towards the total?
Town engineer said an issue was discussed at a conceptual stage, noting that town has to look at the entire site in the MHR zoning district. It is not like eliminating wetlands, steep slopes, as far as establishing density. So that comes, so
I don't know if that's it.
what's that?
What's that?
No, it was some minutes from the meeting.
Okay, I don't know the context of that.
This is what this is saying. that
So for this board right now, for the application as it is in front of us, it seems to me that we have to take into consideration that there is a huge portion of this parcel. You really only got about 3 acres of this thing that's not in this area that is now protected, areas overlay districts and so forth. Within the land, the town has given me copies of those overlay districts.
Yeah, this was, you know, this is.
Can those overlay districts really be counted towards, it's not developable land?
This is a question, you brought this up, I'm just looking at it here. Mr. Anderson raised a question about the density of the development.
I've always questioned that, but I've never really gotten an answer.
What you are,
Mainly because we were never given the final approval plans for phase 1, 2, and 3. We have never seen any of those things, even though I have been requested as a board, we have not received any of those things. So we don't have anything to go on.
Eric, you're looking at me like I failed to give you.
No, I'm just letting you know, because you're the applicant, so I don't have
I don't
any
have stuff from 1985 in the wheel.
Right, you have the one
Take a
plan,
photocopy
it's very
of it.
interesting, because we've never seen that. The other thing I do notice, because I have driven in the area, took a look at it, is that it looks very much like you have this parking lot for the eastern unit, right in the middle of the stormwater detention pond for the rest of the facility. There's an outlet structure there, and there's cattails. And that doesn't show up on your plans, I suppose. That's another change that's happened since 1988, is all the stormwater protection. If you remember back then, that stuff wasn't really in place.
okay, why don't we do this then? Derek, why don't we do this? You got some good points, and I think maybe the thing to do is maybe, why don't you outline them, take them into consideration at this point, and then we can address these things. Because there are some unknowns here. We're just reloaded with.
Well, I think as a board, we have to have an understanding and discussion amongst ourselves too, of how we have these areas that have been identified as places that should be protected. How as a board are we going to have an interpretation of the word process?
Well, the areas to be protected are, and there certainly are. This here piece is the upper flat plateau of the whole overall parcel, which goes all the way down to Arundel Bay.
Sure. I mean,
That's
this chunk,
an EPOD, wetland, and everything else. I mean, that's all protected area.
right,
So there's nothing going in that area.
right, but what they're doing is they're claiming acreage to apply towards total development.
Towards that, no, I
So
understand.
the
That's,
ultimate question is that legitimate?
well,
You can't develop this a while
based on past and
clarification.
based on past in an MHR, this is we have accepted it, so that's why, that's where I'm going with this. So,
In the
but,
past,
I mean, is
they've
it
been
right?
charged
I
for
don't know.
But you've never had this type of environmental overlay.
Correct, so that's why I'm
So
saying,
this is unique to it, so this is something.
why don't we let them check into that and come up with a solution to that? Would that be the answer?
Yes, Derek, your point is noted,
Yeah.
and certainly the applicant's counsel itself can pick up that conversation and get a resolution.
Yeah, good. All right, I know there's some neighbors here, I'm assuming they're neighbors from the project. This isn't a public hearing.
There is one other point.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Still, is it-
Go ahead.
In the presentation, you referenced the traffic study that was done on previous 2017. That traffic study showed that this intersection fails. And at that time, the argument was made that it fails, so therefore we can put whatever we want because it's failed anyway. That's
You're
not
mischaracterizing the traffic study and what we said about it. What the traffic study says is that in 2017, I'm assuming it's been eastbound lane failed on the intersection.
The intersection coming out of Will.
Did not say
Going
one
in the
thing.
arts there. That was definitely takeaway from that traffic study. So anyone that travels up and down Bay Road, tries to get in and out of Parkside, tries to get in and out of Willow Point, they know it is right. Because you can sit there for 5 or 10 minutes trying to get a right before you get a prayer actually has to stop. So that intersection just failed. There is, we have to see some kind of.
Yeah,
We'll have to take a
We're-
look,
we're-
we'll have to take a look at that.
Right, we're gonna
The
provide an
recommendation
updated
is
traffic
simply
study.
this failed, so therefore we can make it fail worse.
I think ultimately, there's going to need to be a traffic study.
Yep, we're gonna update
Of course, that many units and that much traffic, I think we're all in agreement to that.
Yep.
That would be down the road. Those are good points you just brought up. You know what, wait a minute, this isn't a public hearing, I just want to know for the record. So it's not open for public speaking. However, I know there's some people here who have interest in the site. If a few of you want to come up, maybe 2 or 3 people can come up, I just don't want to get repetition going. Come up, just give us your name and address, and you can help us out too. Sure, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dave Geyer. I live at 400 McEwen Lane, so I'm a direct neighbor to the property. I'm very concerned about exactly what Mr. Anderson was talking about, which is grouping for, on convenience sake, grouping all the acreage together, but then not being able to utilize the acreage. And actually, that property with all the overlay zones, there's a beaver pond at the bottom, there's the runoff that's going to come off of that. And I'm very concerned about shoehorning in the property and the buildings into a much smaller area. And I know the planning board is really concerned about the aesthetics of the project. And I'm concerned that that will not reflect well on what we're trying to do in Webster because we are just jamming in as many units as possible. The last attempt that Legacy put in, submitted was for 98 units. This attempt is for 90 units. A lot of concern about parking. The town code, as you know, is 2 units per plus an overflow parking, so 225 units of parking. They're looking at 144 units for parking. I'm not sure where those other 81 people go, but I'm concerned it'll be by Mr. Johnson and Maya's home. So I am concerned about the aesthetics, and then of course how many units we're just trying to jam in this area. If we went with how big this area is at 3.76 acres, we really should be looking at something like 30 units in that area, and that should be the maximum.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Charlie Johnson. I'm at 440 McEwen, which is directly behind the properties. It's actually the last property before right there, right before the pumping station.
Okay.
So obviously, we're looking out directly at the back of the structure. Again, I'm not an expert at reading these, but in terms of the tree line itself, in terms of what they were taking down, what they were going to keep, that existing tree line stops, I think, at the measurement they have for the property next door to mine. Maybe you have to zoom in there. So obviously what I'm talking about is what we're actually looking at, right? We also have children, right? 2 children that have to walk up McEwen Drive to Bay Road to take the bus every day, right? Just like Mr. Guy indicated, just from pure volume standpoint, even trying to make a left turn on the Bay Road going to work every morning is a challenge. I don't know what's going to happen with Willow Point, but if they're saying McEwen is the primary road they want to use, right, that has a very negative impact on quality of life, so to say, right? And the last part, is, and I'm not sure how this works, but access to the interior parts of the building. If there's an issue in between those buildings, I don't know how emergency equipment gets in there.
And that's resolved.
Just looking at the way that's structured, do they go through that little peak there? Do they come back to McEwen? How would they access
That would have to be, that would be controlled by the fire department. They'll review
Okay.
that part, for sure.
And then my last question, it's more of a zoning or variance issue. We don't have a measurement from our property to the back of the dwelling, so I don't know if that's 100 feet, or if it's the property line, or if it's the actual dwelling itself that's 100 feet from the next addition.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, anybody on board? I think the best way to handle this is to review some of these questions that were brought up, address. You know, we've done this in the past. I don't know if we'll be wrong in doing it. I don't know. By including those parcels into the overall equation and then using part of it. I know, like in a cluster development, you don't add that land in, but my understanding in an MHR, you do add it in. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. That's my understanding of what we've done.
I'll tell you, having reviewed the code entirely after our meeting, because it came as a surprise to me, it's in compliance with code to use the entire 13.1 acres. That's what your code says. You can't read anything else developable acres. You can't read in, the stuff we want to be developed or not want to be developed. It's just what the code says. And the way you've been doing it apparently is the right way. It's what your code says. And that's all you're allowed to follow, no matter what you want.
And I can say from the 3 projects that I previously did, none of the wetland areas, all 3 of them had wetland areas. The wetland areas were not taken out of that calculation.
In that type of, like in this case, the MHR.
Correct. Yep, they were all 3 were in the MHR.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm reading, this is one of the comments was from the town engineer at the time stating that, that's what we based our information on, but let's get it clarified 100%. You can talk to our town attorney, see if we can get some documentation on this. Another thing I'd like to, before I forget, is coming off of Willow Point Way, I know there was an issue with, we had an issue going with people in there or something, a lawsuit or something, whether you could use it or not. I know it can't be blocked, that's all, that was the last I understood.
The town has ordered that it not be blocked.
Yeah.
We have access to a public road that is sufficient.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll show that with an updated traffic report.
Okay, I think those are the little things that we need to.
Absolutely.
So they were given permission to do a cross private property.
Excuse me?
I'm thinking back to the comment, that, there was the biggest argument that people in Willow Point had was that this is our private property and that you're proposing a development and those 2 are land. And again, this is something the last time I was here was over resolved, so I guess I'm curious, will you, by some kind of agreement, lawsuit, court order, give them permission to go through Willow Point?
Now, what I said was, we have access to a public road, McEwen, that is sufficient to handle all of the traffic from this.
Right.
What about limiting access to going through Willow Point?
That's not our
People
intent.
there clearly
no.
didn't want to have it.
Okay.
Your second building exclusively was on Willow Point Way, from what I can see.
We own Willow Point Way at that point.
So that parcel, back in the 80s, when this was originally approved, the entrances were off of Willow Point. They had to have been. And also McEwen, but,
Absolutely.
right?
That's exactly correct.
All right, so if you can get some documentation just showing that, just to,
Sure. We can absolutely do that.
okay? Yeah, no, I see that, I see what you've got there, but I think probably just something in a letter form
Okay.
to check
We can do
these
that.
different items.
Well, thank you very much.
Anything else?
Tony,
Yes,
I just want to confirm that you're looking for planning board members and any other staff in the town to provide any follow-up comments or concerns so that the applicant can address them.
yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're clear with that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure engineering is gonna have some, some, is there a PRC meeting this week?
There is,
So more than likely this would be part of it?
yes.
Okay, so then there'll be some.
So there will be further comments coming to you,
Exactly.
that more than what was already discussed now. We just wanted to make sure that we identified that those comments would be coming to you so you can address them either in the drawing and as well written.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay,
We appreciate it.
what else? Let's see, I think you're scheduled for the zoning board
We're out for the zoning board next week.
next week, are
That's
you?
correct.
Okay. All right, well, I guess that's all we can really do tonight. I think we've got a starter direction.
Absolutely.
I think we just have to verify it, that's all.
I think there's a lot, of information that our full set of site plans will tell this board that will alleviate a lot of concerns. For, an updated traffic report, I think that will alleviate a lot of concerns, and, we'll go from there.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen.